and welcome to Magic by Design. We have 101 things to talk about this week because we are reviewing Disney's 17th animated feature, 101 Dalmatians. If you're new to the show, we are aiming to watch and review every Disney animated feature film. Each week we break down a movie from the Disney canon in an attempt to discover the secrets behind the magic. But before we start counting puppies, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ken, and I'm joined as always by my co-host / brother Garrett. Gar, how are you?
Alright, Ken, we're straight in with the fun facts.
Go ahead.
The animated film is called 101 Dalmatians, all spelled out. So yes. It's 101 Dalmatians. Whereas the 1996 live action film is called 101 Dalmatians, the number 101 Dalmatians.
It's sleek and cool like the 90s.
Yeah, it's much fancier. And also, we have to issue a correction. We said, was it Maleficent? We said something to the extent that Maleficent was the first, or Cinderella was the first one. Whichever one was the first one they adapted as a live action film.
Maleficent.
They adapted 101 Dalmatians as a live action film.
In 1996, so that's quite a while before Maleficent.
And like, realistically, 101 Dalmatians is the one that probably makes most sense to it, because you just have to get a bunch of Dalmatians and actual people, and you can just make it as a live action film. It's actually pretty easy.
Yeah, and visual effects can do the rest.
Yes. So, yeah, there's my fun facts. Already right in. I didn't read the book. Sorry, I failed. Sorry, Dodie. Dodie or Dottie, do you think?
I would say Dodie. We'll get to her in a while.
It's short for Dorothy, so Dodie. There we go. Dodie Smith. I'm sorry I failed you.
Yeah. The book is also named 101 Dalmatians, all spelled out.
She lived to 94. Fair old innings.
Fair play to her. Gar, we are entering the 1960s now, which has a very specific style. We're going to see a series of movies that have this very specific style. This was driven mostly by...
Cheap? Is cheap the word you're looking for, Ken?
Yes, this was driven mostly by cost saving, but it's also partially informed by the changing aesthetic of the time. It does have a very distinctive 1960s feel about it.
It doesn't feel alive anymore.
No.
Go straight into it. It just does... like, whereas Sleeping Beauty felt like a painting come to life, this just feels like a painting.
It just feels like a cartoon, doesn't it?
It's just like there's animated characters in front of a painted backdrop. You can see it. It's so much cheaper, especially in comparison to Sleeping Beauty, which is like, you know, probably the benchmark for the quality of animation. But even Lady and the Tramp, which is an immensely pretty film. And this, like, the animation doesn't look bad. It does look perfectly fine. It's perfectly functional. But in terms of like the level of detail and like the amount of like incorporating the environments into a scene to make them feel like fully realized and create this fully featured world, this film doesn't even begin to try that, and it's fine. But as you said, money. Classic Disney like got the means of distribution back and the standards fell. It's classic. Without RKO to put the pressure on, it's like, hey, make this better. Disney clearly cutting corners, saving money, just being like, oh, we'll have the animation look like garbage. Let's throw it down the drain.
Garbage.
Putting the gar in. I put the gar in garbage every week.
Oh,
but
no, you don't. You're fantastic.
Yeah, it's not that bad looking, but it is a distinct visual step down from what came before.
I have a lot of thoughts on the animation. I'll get to it in a while, but after Sleeping Beauty disappointed at the box office, there was some talk about closing down the animation department at Disney.
That's wild to me. It's like, we had one flop, so instead of being like, the problem was Sleeping Beauty, they're like, the problem's animation. People don't want animation. I always find when people are like, people don't want this genre of thing anymore because one thing did badly. It's like the most short-sighted thing imaginable. You see, or like the flip side of that, where it's like one thing and a thing does well, and then people are like, this is what everybody wants. It's like, no, people just wanted that thing. So it's not that like that's the thing everybody wants every time they go to see a film or play a video game or read a book. It's just when that thing is good, you know, it's good. It's not like, oh, we have to make when Harry Potter hits, we all have to make young adult stuff. No matter whether it's good or not, it doesn't matter. It's the Harry Potter story that has connected people, not the young adult stuff. And the same way that like the films that connected and did really well, like Cinderella did extremely well. It's like that story connected with people and did really well. But then they started doing fairy tales as well. So they're in their head, Ken. This is the era of Disney being stuck in their head.
They're getting very self-conscious. Also, Walt Disney himself had become disenchanted with animation.
It made his millions.
Yeah.
What a turd.
In fairness, the only reason he was becoming disenchanted was because, we talked about this in previous weeks, he was becoming distracted by other things, but also he was saying at the time that it's just become too expensive. We noted that last week as well. Sleeping Beauty was not an unsuccessful film by any means, but it just cost so much money that they couldn't make it back.
And they spent 6 years on Sleeping Beauty?
Yeah, probably the best part of a decade altogether, as we said last week. Check out our Sleeping Beauty episode for more details. Despite his feelings, he still had a deep affinity towards animation because he had built the company upon it. So yeah, as you said, Garrett, yeah, it built his fortune, so he couldn't let it go. It's like something that's bad for you that you keep doing anyway because it's something that you love.
I just imagine Walt Disney walking to the office, sitting on one side of the table. It's like, Mickey, you're out of a job. Then he runs around to the other table. It's like, oh no, Mr. Disney, you can't put me out of work. It's like, runs back around to the other side of the table. So, I'm sorry, Mickey, the people just don't want you anymore.
How am I going to buy my yellow shoes and red pants? The film was originally released in theatres in January 1961 and was a box office success, pulling the studio out of the financial slump caused by Sleeping Beauty. Critics were also kind to the film. Some said it was Disney's best animated film since Snow White, and the most Disney-feeling film in years. They noted that the animation was not as sophisticated as previous efforts, that's an understatement, but praise for the film came from its charm, wit, and lack of pretense.
Are the critics in the 60s always wrong? Are they just... I think you like this film more than I do. I think this film is fine.
Yeah,
because you were like, oh, when we finished watching it last night, you were like, oh, that's a perfectly good time, and I'm like, is it?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. As in, I wouldn't put it up there as a classic, but I also enjoyed it for what it was. I wouldn't by any means say it was bad.
I think it's fine. It's like, it's completely innocent. It doesn't have any it's super basic. Like, what's the prevailing message of 101 Dalmatians? Don't kill dogs? Is that the takeaway? Yeah. That's the deep moral that you're getting out of this piece of culture?
Well, Disney was very fond of the script when he read it.
Well, there you go. Disney clearly has no taste. I have no memory of this film. I don't think I've ever seen it. And I my memory does come from that 96 live action version, which I also don't remember actually watching.
We saw it in the cinema. I do remember that.
Did we?
We did.
Was I there?
You were there. Our aunt and uncle gave us a book of cinema vouchers and McDonald's vouchers, and we used 2 of them on that.
101 Dalmatians. I have no memory of it. Like, and I have some memory of it, like Glenn Close.
you would have been 4, so maybe Glenn Close was really appealing to you as a 4-year-old.
Clearly not, because I barely remember it. It's like, because I remember Power Rangers and I remember The Lion King. Clearly, much more fundamental pieces of culture to my childhood that I have vague memories of actually seeing them. I remember seeing Babe Pig in the City, and we were very upset because it wasn't very good. Dad took us to see Babe Pig in the City, a rare dad cinema trip, and it was terrible. But 101 Dalmatians, no memory whatsoever. And I think we watched it in primary school once, or at least watched some of it in primary school, and it would have been in that perfect window of films I would have watched in primary school. But also, I still don't remember it, not particularly clearly. So especially, I definitely haven't seen the original animated film, and for good reason, because it's fine.
I don't think I'd ever seen it anyway. Sorry.
Before I bury you, you can't reset when I'm going into burying. You can't.
Sorry, I was about to reset because I stumbled there. No, I lost my train of thought, Gareth. Thanks very much.
You were going to say, I don't think I've ever seen the original. Say it so I can interrupt you.
I don't think I've ever seen the original.
Of course you haven't. You were like, where's the 101 Dalmatians?
We'll get there, Gareth. There's a script. There's an order. We're going to get to it.
You were like, there's only 15. Where's the rest? You were like, why doesn't the dog give birth to 101 puppies? Or 99 puppies, I guess.
Okay, we'll get to there. Don't make
you were
fun of
so
me.
Confused.
I was so confused, and I'll talk about it in a minute, but we're talking about animation now, okay, Gareth? Okay? All right, can we continue?
No, it's funny, because you were like, I've been deceived, I've been had, I've been conned.
The premise says 101 Dalmatians. I feel conned.
Yeah, and you were like, there's only 17 in the film at the moment.
As you said, Gareth, this is a distinct departure from the detail of Sleeping Beauty. The films of the 60s have a raggedness to the loose, sketchy style, but that said, there's something I find kind of appealing about it.
You like cheap, crappy animation. That's the reason you watch Thundercats Go. You're super into cheap, lazy animation. Well, it's probably not lazy, it's mostly just cheap. I'm sure the people that work on it work very hard on it, but they don't have enough money to make it detailed. But that's usually the case, because animation is horrible and time-consuming and takes up most of your life. But yeah, you're clearly fond of animation without detail, animation without character, animation without a sense of place and a sense of purpose. It's just filling in the blanks. So the film's not that bad to look at. but still.
I kind of like the look of it. I like the imperfectness of it, but there's also a rich detail in other places. And
You're like, Disney, make them all cheap.
yeah, don't spend any money. The less money, the better. It has okay results.
The next one, I just wanted to be sketches. Just no color. Don't even draw the characters. Just put stickman.
Stickman, no voiceover, just stock audio.
Stock. Put together a series of stock clips.
Hello there, Anna. I am going to the castle today.
There you go.
The commercial success, as we said, was aided by the employment of inexpensive animation techniques, such as xerography, during the process of inking and painting traditional animation cells. That kept the production costs down. This is basically the process of, instead of the animators drawing directly onto the cells, the inking process that's pre-painting, they'd just photocopy them instead to eliminate the hand inking stage. However, because of its limitations, the camera was unable to deviate from the black scratchy outline and lacked the fine lavish quality of hand inking, so that's why you see those kind of rough around the edges look.
It's jagged, edgy, incomplete.
Disney disliked the artistic look of the film. And
spend more money on it then, Walt, for the love of God. Hey, make this film for half the cost of the last one. We looks at it. This doesn't look like the usual Disney animated films. I'm clearly learning to hate Walt Disney. And this is just me against Walt in a battle of wills.
He felt that they were losing the fantasy element of the films.
But this isn't a fantasy film.
Yeah, but he's saying that the look had a fantasy feeling to it. But
it's not a fantasy film.
That's why I thought it was 101 Dalmatians, because I thought it was a fantasy film where one dog can have 101 Dalmatians.
99.
Sorry, 99.
There you go.
They give birth to themselves and their partner, and then they have 99 puppies.
But being like, this doesn't look fantastical. This film is set in London. I think it's London, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's set in London, which is a contemporary city. It's set in a house in London. It's not meant to look fantastical. And the dogs aren't even magical dogs. They're just dogs. That's like giving out that frickin' Lady and the Tramp doesn't look fantastical. It doesn't, because it's not meant to.
Yeah, I thought that was part of the design choice, that it was supposed to not look run down, but more kind of
look like
subdued.
Yeah, it's supposed to look like a suburban area with dogs.
I actually enjoyed the backgrounds. The Impressionist watercolour style had kind of a funky posterized vibe that's very in vogue today in illustration.
Yeah, sure. Cheapness is in vogue, I guess.
So you had that kind of watercolor outline, and then they used kind of ink pen to do the details. I kind of liked it. Today it would be seen as a design choice, and then it would have been seen as a step down or being lazy. So I think if you did that today, it would be seen very much as kind of as a choice for the film, but in the time and given the context of the cost cutting, it's seen as cheap.
Yeah, because it kind of is.
One thing I noted, Gar, and we noticed this before, the lip syncing is a bit rough, like some of the previous films pre-1950. They seem to have trouble with English accents. Wind in the Willows had the same problem.
Yeah, clearly they're much better at lip syncing dogs than they are British people. Makes sense of that. And the dogs have it's not the same as
Lady and the
Tramp, but they have the similar features and eyes and faces as Lady and the Tramp. So yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of dog animation style. It's like the bluebirds that are in all of these films. Like Pongo, he has a very tramp-like vibe to him in terms of how, and they're completely different species of dog, but in terms of their facial expressions and the way they animate themselves.
Yeah, he does, but he's a bit less expressive because the finer detail comes with the finer, the finer lines. So
yes.
When you have that sketchy style, the transition between poses and faces just looks a bit laboured and strange. Like I had in my notes here, the movement of the characters is very slow and unsophisticated. It's kind of, we talked about jerky in the past, but it's not quite jerky, but it just doesn't feel right at times.
And there's many scenes where they're animating 30 puppies on screen at once, and they're just just get them in there. They don't have to look sophisticated.
There's one scene when they're moving towards a farmhouse, and the ones in the foreground are moving, but all the rest of them are just, it's just a still shot.
And what impressed me a lot about Lady and the Tramp was the fact that the dogs felt like dogs. They did not feel anthropomorphized. They actually felt like they behaved like dogs. And that is certainly not the case in this film whatsoever.
No. One thing I noticed as well is that they use a lot of held cells or still frames. Did you notice that?
Yeah, there's the period where we're listening to the barking. The colonel is listening to the barking and deciphering it. And it's a 4-second scene where it's just a still frame of them listening with no movement whatsoever. It's literally just hold it there for 4 seconds. That's 4 seconds off the runtime of the film. Job done. Yeah,
we're getting back to those shortcuts that we criticised in the past. Moving on here to the story, Gar. It's based on the 1956 novel The 101 Dalmatians by Dodie Smith. Disney assigned Bill Peet to write the story, marking the first time that the story for a Disney animated film was written by just one person. Peet condensed elements of the original book while enlarging others, some of which included eliminating Cruella's husband and cat, so Cruella has a husband in the actual book, as well as merging the two mother Dalmatians, birth mother Mrs. and adopted mother Perdita, into one character. He also retained a scene in which Pongo and Perdita exchange wedding vows in unison with their owners. The film censor board warned that it might offend certain religious audiences if the animals repeated the exact words of the solemn religious ceremony.
Why?
So the scene was reworked to be less religious, with Roger and Anita dressed in just, they're wearing their suit and their Sunday best, and you don't actually see the dog say, I do.
The dogs just rub noses, which is actually quite sweet.
It's actually a nice change.
But the frickin' board being like, religious groups might get upset at the dogs getting married. It's like the episode of Parks and Rec where Leslie Knope accidentally marries gay penguins. And everyone gets upset. It's that, but for real in the 60s.
Interesting note here, a fun fact if you will. Pete did not know how to use a typewriter, so he wrote the manuscript by hand and had it typed up.
How do you not this? When were typewriters invented? Because that's the equivalent of like not being able to use a computer now and handwriting it.
So where are we? In the late 50s? I would have said probably at least 40, 50 years maybe.
Didn't Mick Foley do that when he wrote his books?
Yeah.
He hand wrote them and just passed them off to an editor because he couldn't use a laptop at the time.
That's awful.
Seems like a nightmare to dump on somebody.
Especially when, when you're writing a book, sometimes it makes sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to anyone else.
It's probably stream of consciousness. And when you're typing it, you'll go back and edit it, which you can't really do when you handwrite it.
Yeah, especially like trying to decipher someone's handwriting as well. That must be quite difficult.
Yeah, it seems to be a task you pour on some poor soul.
Walt said the script was great stuff and commissioned Pete to begin storyboarding. Although Disney had not been involved in the production of the animated films as frequently in previous years, he did attend every story meeting during this film.
He was like, you better get those dogs right. I love these Dalmatians.
We're hemorrhaging money. When Pete sent Dodie Smith some drawings of the characters, she wrote back saying that he had actually improved hers and that the designs looked better than the illustrations in her book. Imagine reading the script and going, wait a second.
That feels like a Disney-ified version of history.
Yeah.
Dodie Smith said that their film is even better than her book and wasn't at all upset at anything they did. It's like, have you seen Saving Mr. Banks?
I have. We saw it together.
Yes, I think we talked about this actually already on the podcast, but the end of that film is she watches the Mary Poppins film that they make, and
she weeps at one point.
She weeps despite being so adversarial and combative about all the elements of the film, and that was not the case whatsoever. She hated that final film. She did not sit there in that screening and weep.
Yeah, apparently the major sticking point was that she wanted no animation.
Yeah, and he still put the damn animation in
He
there.
put it in, and she said, I will never let you adapt one of my pieces again. And they had to wait till she died.
And then the second she died, they did. Well, not the second she died, but it's like, Mary Poppins Returns was released a couple of years ago, which I haven't seen.
All you have to do is wait for a generation that's ungrateful that will sell the rights. Yes. And then you're...
The desperate kids who are just like, oh, we need money. Let's live off mom.
I have quite a list of notes on the actual story that I took myself care. The first of which is the narrative of humans being dogs' pets is quite cute.
Yes, but that's kind of a Lady and the Tramp thing.
Also, there is a kind of a trope here of dogs looking like their owners, which I thought was a funny bit. They're almost like avatars for each other. So,
Pongo is definitely an avatar for you.
Yeah, because she's
needy, annoying, manipulative, self-indulgent, all the horrible, deeply disloyal. Ken already wants to move on.
I immediately regret this statement, and I will be sending you my therapy bills. But you can see that Pongo is almost like Roger in some ways. They have the same characteristics and same almost personality, which I thought was fun. I also enjoyed the narration. I can't say the word narration because I always want to say narration, but it's not right. Narration. I enjoyed the narration motif by Pongo. It almost felt like a storybook, and the visual style matched that. It felt like a moving storybook. So I'm not saying that was the intent, but if you're looking for
will go to any length to justify the cheapness of the animation.
I will concede that it's cheap, Gar, but I found a bit of charm in the cobbled together nature of it.
It doesn't actually look bad. It's just it's inferior, but still perfectly pleasant.
Cruella, to me, she seemed a bit cartoonish and over the top as a child, but people like her do exist today, Gar. We call them influencers. That's a bit of a joke there that didn't land.
I I like the immediate self-consciousness about the joke. It's like,
Just because you know it's older.
Oh, very good, Ken. Very good joke. It's like the Instagram people that you hate. You hate these people on Instagram. They're like, look at me. Ken has a vendetta against these people.
I don't mind if they're actually influencers where they have a lot of followers and they're making a living off it. I just don't like when people want to be influencers and they talk to people like they have an audience. I don't know why.
Yes. Hey, fans. It's like, you have 20 followers on Instagram. Stop it.
Hey, guys. Like, that cadence is almost like, did you ever see that supercut? It was like of YouTubers that they had to put together. I can't remember where it was. I think it was on Twitter, where it's like, hey, guys. Hey guys, hey guys.
The exact same delivery and intonation and all that fun stuff. See, we never acknowledge the audience on this podcast because we know we don't have one. We're perfectly decent, respectable people.
Yeah, a handful of friends and well-wishers listen to it, and that's good enough for me. Cruella De Vil, staying on that topic here, she's top of many people's villain list, and I get it from a design point of view. The iconic black and white hair and angular proportions. She was designed by Mark Davis, who also designed Maleficent, but she doesn't do a whole lot in this film. She just didn't leave the same impression on me as other big villains in Disney history.
And you know what's a big problem? We just watched Sleeping Beauty, which has Maleficent.
That's the benchmark.
Who rules? And like, I think Cruella De Vil, perfectly good, great theme song, probably the best theme song of a character.
Yeah. The visual design is on point as well. It is iconic.
And she makes some wonderful maniacal faces. Like late in the film when she's driving through the town that the dogs are hiding in, she's looking in the window and she's like, and she makes these big faces while driving past. Very good. But as a character, she's paper thin. And you said surprisingly absent from the film for long periods.
Jasper and Horace do most of the heavy lifting as villains, and she kind of just weaves in and out, but in my head I thought she had more of a role in the film.
Yeah, and she kind of doesn't. And like most, like in terms of like, you know, obviously the 101 Dalmatians film in the 90s I think is a lot more built around her because the dogs don't speak in that film, so the human characters take a bigger role. And
the sequel 102 Dalmatians was very much based around Cruella as well.
Yeah, I was reading the plot synopsis, which I'm now going to read to you. The plot synopsis: after 3 years in prison, Cruella De Vil has been cured of her desire for fur coats by Dr. Pavlov and is released into the custody of probation officer on prison. She forced to repay the remainder of her fortune to all the dog shelters in Westminster. It's like, that's a good start. It's actually interesting that there's a sequel to the 101 Dalmatians live action film, which is called 102 Dalmatians, and there's a sequel to the 101 Dalmatians animated film, which is called 101 Dalmatians 2 Patch's London Adventure, which is straight to video. But it's like, you can't call that 102. That would cause market confusion, and they're released 3 years apart in 2003. So they're like, let's leech the Dalmatians franchise for all it's worth.
There was a TV show as well.
Was there?
There was.
I've never seen a TV show. And they're also making a live action, what they call a spin-off prequel called Cruella in 2021. Who's playing Cruella in that? That's a good question.
Emma Stone is attached. I did my research.
Oh, is she attached or she's playing Cruella De Vil. So there you go.
Well, she's attached contractually because she's doing it.
Yes, she is attached to doing it.
We can talk about it now, Gar. I always thought that Perdita actually gave birth to 99 puppies.
Yes. You were so confused. It's like, where's the rest of the dogs? Why aren't they coming?
She has 15 and the rest are made up of stolen puppies from other families, or I think they bought them in pet shops. I'm not sure. The consensus is kind of split.
I thought that the idea was they were stolen.
That's what I thought as well, but I read something that said that they were bought.
I don't remember seeing anything in the film that they were bought. It's clearly filling in the plot themselves. Because, like, if you're buying the Dalmatians, why would you go to the effort of stealing another 15 of them then? You already bought 84. Why are you like, all right, now we need to steal the rest of them?
Maybe it's because they drained the market and they really needed these last 15 to make those coats.
How many Dalmatians do you need to... But you could let the Dalmatians grow a little and then you'd only need like 12 of them to make a fur coat.
But the puppy fur is softer.
Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
You gotta club them while they're small.
Oh.
It's easier to kill them as well when they're small.
Yeah, one of the puppy lines, I can't remember the exact one, it was like, Cruella was going to off us and steal her coat. It's like, oh, well, this dog knows what's happening.
Yeah, Patches, I think that was Patch, wasn't it?
I think so.
Patches, first of all, Patch is adorbs.
He got the sequel, so clearly they thought Patches was the star.
And he was a prominent figure in the animated series as well, on television. So, yeah, Patch is the breakout star, but also Rolly is my spirit animal. It's like, I'm hungry. Food. I'm hungry. Did you bring food? It's like, that's all he ever says. I'm hungry, Mom.
That's all. Again, going back to your dog is just like you. That's all your dog is ever looking for too. So, because
we say this all the time, she is very fond of escaping, which is very strange for an inside dog. Because as we said before, she's a Chihuahua. But whoever found her, they just keep her because she's like, food and attention. I'm yours.
Yes, deeply disloyal.
Yeah, but that's why we have to keep her inside so she can never escape. Jasper and Horace are what every American think English people are, even to this day.
Yeah, it's a fierce caricature.
I love I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah,
it's pretty. It's a stereotype, but I kind of like. They're kind of like a double actor, kind of like they're not twins, but they look like each other. And I thought, as you said, they did a lot of the heavy lifting as villains, and their kind of bumbling nature. It's weird because they went from kind of being bumbling, but also kind of very sinister in a lot of ways. I thought that was a nice contrast.
I didn't like them.
No?
It's just like, we're heavies. It's like, why are you in so... And there's a period where, like, they're trying to ram cars off roads. It's like, do you really need this money from Cruella De Vil that much? That you're willing to expose yourself this badly? It's like, are you that deeply... Because they're hired goons. That's their role in this film. They're hired goons by Cruella De Vil to steal the dogs and deliver the dogs. And actually, no, kill the dogs. I assume shear the dogs. And that's when they're done, I suppose?
Skin them, not even shear them.
Yeah.
Because you could shear them when they're alive. You had to skin them.
It's like, all right, we finished watching our shows now. We gotta kill the dogs.
You think after a while of nearly being killed on the road, you'd be like, oh man, as you said, we don't need this money that much.
This money's not worth it. I'm not going down with this crazy woman who wants a coat.
Although we don't know how much money it was, Karen. Maybe it was a lot of money.
It may have been. She did give him their old house, or her old house, which was falling apart, but nonetheless.
It does fall apart in the end of that sequence. One thing I noted here as well, Gar, this film also does expand on the world of dogs that we see in Lady and the Tramp, and apparently there's something called the Twilight Bark, which is a form of telegram.
Okay.
You know, that's how they communicate with each other. They bark and it's like, oh, it's the Pongos. And I love how like it's a patriarchal society in dogs, so like the surname of the dog families is named after the husband, I guess.
Yes, deeply misogynistic.
The Pongos, but that's his first name, so like they don't have a surname, so they're the Pongos. Did you notice, Gar, there was cameos of character designs from Lady and the Tramp in that sequence?
No.
Yeah, so we saw the female dog who sings He's a Tramp, and we also see the bulldog and the Scottish Terrier.
There you go.
So it's there. It's a little Easter egg in case you missed it.
Is this a military film?
There is a military element, isn't there?
All the dogs are like colonels, and
the cat is
the chain of command.
Yeah.
The horse, they're all in the chain of command of the military. And like Pongo is like, oh yes, thank you, Commander. He's just like, he acknowledges the dog military.
He respects our men in uniform. Our canines in uniform. And felines, I should say. We don't want to leave out the cat.
And horse.
Equines. Equines.
There you go.
Sorry, Gar. I forgot about the horse for a minute. Oh, there's a really funny sequence where he basically uses the horse as a Gatling gun and aims at at Horace. I think it's Horace or Jasper, and pulls the trigger and boots him into a shed.
But you were very upset because you thought you no-sold the horse kick.
Like, if you get kicked by a horse, like they both got kicked by a horse and then they got straight back up and chased after the puppies. Like, you got kicked by a horse, you're not getting up for a while.
If this were a wrestling match, you'd be like, -5 stars, poor selling.
No selling. You should have at least gone to the hospital for a couple of months and then come back and chase the puppies.
Or if this is the World Wrestling Entertainment, they should have gone to a local medical facility because they don't like the word hospital.
That's a whole different podcast. I really appreciated the effort that went into the little vignettes for the fake TV shows. I thought that was really admirable. There was the one, what's it called? Thunder Dog, yeah.
Thunder Pet, Thunder Wolf, something like that. You know what it reminded me of? From Toy Story 2, Woody's Roundup.
Oh yeah, Woody and the horse. And, yeah, same kind of style.
Yeah.
And for one of the releases, I think it was an anniversary edition, they actually made a short based on the dog, like an episode. Nice. It's quite cool.
I think my favourite part of the film is them just watching that scene and they're super into that dog. And he's like, the dog, he's like, he's not playing, he's not dead, he's playing dead to trick him, I think.
And Lucky really loves TVs because he goes up really close and he's like pawing the screen.
Yeah.
And that comes back later because when he's trying to rescue them all, he gets them all out except Lucky because he's still watching the TV.
Idiot.
One of the shows on the TV as well is an academic panel show where people are trying to guess what a prisoner's crime was. If the prisoner wins, he wins a 2-week holiday after he
serves his time.
His time to society.
In 15 years after you went away from murder, you will go to the Bahamas.
That might seem like an abstract joke, but there was actual academic panel shows that was a phenomenon on early English TV because it was cheap and uncomplicated to produce. I know this because I listened to David Attenborough's autobiography. Early in his career, before he became more of a naturalist and doing nature documentaries, he produced television shows, and he was on one of those shows where academics would go to a museum and they'd bring out artifacts and they'd have to identify what it was.
And like, realistically, that format still exists.
Yeah.
It's like it's just veered more to comedy than academic. But like the UK television is full of comedy panel shows.
Yeah, I just find that interesting that, like, I know what the public want. Academics talking about artifacts.
Like Mock the Week, Have I Got News for You? Even like 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown. Even all stuff like that. Never mind the Buzzcocks. All of that same DNA. You know, the tradition of those shows still hangs on.
Yeah.
So it's not even like an antiquated idea.
It's not an antiquated idea, but like they've moved away from the original premise.
Yes, it's now veered more for comedy than like learning. But though even like Have I Got News for You is like kind of straddling both a little.
One thing you said, Patch had some good lines. He's also very bad at maths because he's like, oh, we got all 15 puppies back. He's like, no, Dad, we have double that, and there was like 99.
There was 99 of them. Yes, Patch cannot count. He's a young dog. He'll get there.
Also, when they're hiding out in that barn, the cow saying that their milk is on the house was a great line.
Yeah,
I really like that. A couple more notes here on things, Gar. Why do they have to keep all the puppies? Why not trying to return them to their owners?
Technically, they stole those, but like even if the theory, I'm going to call it a theory because I don't think it's backed up in the film, unless I missed the line of dialogue that says where they were taken.
No, there was no line. This is just what people think.
Yes, but like realistically, at the end of the film, that family just stole 88 puppies too. Like this is a whole film about somebody stealing Dalmatians, and then at the end of the film, the heroes steal 84 Dalmatians. So it's like, what moral am I meant to take out of this film, Ken? Stealing dogs is okay when you do it, but not when she does it? Well, fair enough, she wants to kill the dog.
I think
it's a different issue altogether.
It's one of those things like, do you know if you find money like on the street and there's no wallet?
That's how dogs work.
It's like fair play because you don't know who owns it and you don't know where it came from. But if you found a wallet, you'd have the obligation to try and find who owned it and give it back. Mm-hmm. Like if they knew who the dogs belonged to, they would try to give them back. But since they don't, maybe they're like, fair game. I'm going to keep 88 puppies in this tiny London house. 84, sorry.
I think I said 88 earlier too, so that's so true you're off.
Yes, I'm very bad at maths, much like Patch.
You and Patch are there together, horrible at maths. So you're saying it's too difficult a task to even try to find homes for the 84 puppies, so you just keep them.
Let's just keep them all and move to a farm, because he's like, where are we going to keep them? I was like, we'll just move to a farm.
It's a good thing, honey. Your Cruella De Vil song took off and we're really rich. Yeah. It's just like, all right.
Wrap it up.
Tie it together, Cruella De Vil. Cruella De Vil. It's catchy. I can see why it caught on.
It really is.
Really, they ripped her off too. That's her name. Using her name to make money.
Is she getting royalties for this?
She should get royalties for this. Using her name in a song without permission. The song is about her as well. It's not just her name.
It's about her personality and character traits.
So not only is it a song that's mean to her about how awful she is, but also it uses her name and then not getting royalties. Then they steal 84 puppies. You know she's the good queer guy in this film. This family is the true bad guys.
Gara hasn't read this film, or Cruella is actually the good guy. That's why she's the feature of the sequels and spin-offs.
Yeah, Roger and Anita, get out of here. You're the villains of this film.
Well, maybe they are.
Stealing dogs, stealing royalty checks. Horrible people.
Smoking pipes menacingly.
Yeah.
There was a nice piece of design as well where Cruella's car looked like it had a menacing face. So when she was chasing it, it looked like it had an angry face.
Yeah.
I like that. I just wanted to note that.
But yeah, one more thing on them being villains, Ken. They originally are breeding the Dalmatians for Cruella. Then they're like, I like the Dalmatians. Breach of contract. Come on.
Cara, you've done some stuff because you did business in college. Is that a verbal contract?
Yes, there's clearly an offer acceptance remuneration. I suppose she's trying to pay them and he doesn't take the check. But still, nonetheless, there's a verbal contract. And like I remember when she goes out that door, she's like, remember, tell me when you get the puppies come. So truly untrustworthy people. Cruella, painted in the bad light. She's officially removed from any list of top Disney villains, Ken, because she is in fact not a Disney villain.
She's the protagonist?
Yes.
But she's also straight insane because she's so desperate to keep up with trends that she immediately goes to ram the van carrying the puppies off the road.
I love that. It's like, because they're on a hairpin turn going around and she just tries to ram the thing off the side of the road. It's like, yes, psychopath. That's what I'm here for.
I'm going to kill this man and possibly half the puppies.
And probably myself in the process.
But I'll get those coats. Quickly on the music era, we know Nicole, this is her domain and she does a good job.
There's 2 songs in the film, so.
There's 3 total, but 2 of them have like 1 or 2 lines. Cruella De Vil is the most memorable song. It's really the only song in the film besides 2 brief 1-line songs. In order to have music involved in the narrative, Pete, who he seemed to do a lot of jobs on this film. He seemed to more or less be the director. He used an old theatre trick by which the protagonist is a down and out songwriter, so that's how you introduce music. Because I wouldn't say this is a musical in the classic Disney fashion,
It's
but
probably honestly one of the least musical films they've made so far.
yeah, but they also
It has two real songs,
2 real songs and one that's just one line,
like a jingle.
yeah.
So yeah, it has the Cruella De Vil song and it has the Dalmatian Plantation song.
Yeah.
And then
That's even in just a couple of lines.
it's just at the end of the film. Yeah, it's a Dalmatian Plantation. We're going to have a Dalmatian Plantation. That's the song. But still.
And goodbye.
Yeah, film's over. So yeah, I think it's the least musically focused, or at least up there as one of the least musically focused of these animated films so far. And like even like literally as the Dalmatian Plantation song was starting, I was like, there's basically no music in this film. But in fairness, the one song, very good.
Very good.
Like
And
Cruella De Vil, very good song. Very good. Like it's like it passes my I obviously remember it's the iconic song from this film. It's like Cruella De Vil, and that's gonna be stuck in your head forever.
And I think it stands the test of time as well, because even if you haven't seen the film, you probably know the song. So that's another big sign.
If when I sang Cruella De Vil there, and that's the first time you've ever heard that in your life, I would be supremely impressed. Even if you've never seen these films, you would have been like Cruella De Vil. I don't even know the words. I would be like you know the Cruella De Vil bit. Come on,
You at least know the opening.
I assume Nicole is singing that.
Gar, spoilers.
Spoilers. Yeah, she could sing whatever she wants.
She could sing anything. She could sing any of the 3 songs.
She could sing dialogue from the puppies.
I didn't notice the score that much, but saying that, I did enjoy it. It had a bluesy feel, and I found myself tapping my toe to it from time to time.
Yeah, you commented like the first scene immediately during the 60s is like jazz.
Jazz,
it immediately
bluesy.
comes in on some jazz.
Yeah. So I found myself getting hooked on that. Additional songs were written, but not included in the film. The first song, Don't Buy a Parrot from a Sailor, a Cockney chant, was meant to be sung by Jasper and Horace in the De Vil mansion. A second song, Cheerio, Goodbye, Toodaloo, Hip Hip, was to be sung by the Dalmatian puppies as they make their way into London. And a third song, titled March of the 101, was meant for the dogs as they were escaping Cruella by van, but all that was cut.
I feel like Jasper and Horace could have done with this song. Like
If there was a live action musical like they've had with other Disney films, they definitely have a song.
They definitely have a song, and like it's like it would be like that Master of the House from Les Mis.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine them having a song just like that.
Yeah, so if you do that, Disney, we're going to sue you.
Yeah.
That's our intellectual property based on your intellectual property. So going forward to kind of final thoughts on the legacy of this film, for me, it's not a work of art. We both agreed on that. But I found the design appealing in the fact that it was imperfect and had a loose style. The story was affable and charming. The characters are memorable. There were shortcuts in the production, but I don't think the film is too worse off for it. Overall, I don't think it's making any top 10 lists, but for me, it's one I'd happily revisit on a lazy Sunday afternoon.
You see, I'm lower than you. I think this is the first time we kind of at least slightly disagree in the film.
Conflict.
Whereas like I'd be like, this film it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly pleasant. It's in the Dumbo tier for me. Or it's just
like a B movie?
Yeah. Or it's just like there's really nothing wrong with this, but it is pretty much completely inessential in nearly every way for me. So that's where I come down.
As we said before, Gar, the film had multiple sequels, live action remakes and spin-offs. Another live action adaptation on the origin story of Cruella De Vil is in the works with Emma Stone attached
What's
to
the
play
origin
Cruella.
story of Cruella? Her parents are rich and like she's apparently a college friend of Anita. Isn't that a school friend of Anita? Is what they framed it as.
Even though she looks much older.
Yeah, she looks like 40 years older than Anita is, but nonetheless, clearly the wealth has not kept her young.
It's probably the same old story. Like she's a good girl and who wants to be nice, and then her repressive Donald Trump. She's Donald Trump.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Do you think Donald Trump has murdered dogs?
For sure. I think he at least drowned one. Cruella De Vil is also an enduring villain for reasons that, as we said, we're not really sure why.
Well, like, she's memorable. You can't say she's not memorable. You know, it's not like you're like, oh, that 101 Dalmatians film. Who was the villain in that one? You know, no one on earth will come out of this film not being like, Cruella De Vil.
People might not even remember Horace and Jasper, but they will remember her. So, like, the two things this film stands out, obviously the puppies, the visual of all these puppies, and her. So, I can understand why, but as I said, in terms of the actual depth of the character and what she did in her role in the film, I think she's one of the weakest so far.
Well, she's better than Snow White. The stepmother in Cinderella, is she a good villain? I'm not sure.
I thought I enjoyed how absolutely petty she was.
is very petty. Oh, by the way, 101 Dalmatians, of course, features in Kingdom Hearts.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't throw to you for your weekly Kingdom Hearts talk.
Yes, in Kingdom Hearts, yeah, the house that they live in is part of Traverse Town. And you go in there and they're like, oh no, the puppies have been lost and scattered across the universe. So as you progress through Kingdom Hearts, you find boxes of puppies. I don't know why they've been separated into boxes and sent to different
So you have to find all 101?
No,
or 99, sorry.
No, they're combined into like, you find like 3 or 4 at a time. So like you find 3 of the puppies in a box in Neverland and then another 4 in a box in the
But does it add up
the
to
deep
99?
jungle from Tarzan. Yeah, you have to get to 99. And you get bonuses for every like 10 you find when you go back. It's like, thank you. Pongo's like, thank you for finding my children. So yeah, that's
Why does he keep losing his children?
He's
a bad
clearly
dad.
very negligible as a father, but also very very horny. Actually, no, that's actually the reason. Part of the reason that they keep the dogs. In fairness,
Oh yes, they think that
they think
belong
that Pongo has just been very busy.
Where do they think they were hiding all of them?
Don't worry about it. They're like, Pongo, where did you get all these kids from?
Pongo is very virile.
Yeah, but so that's your Kingdom Hearts update for the week.
Yeah, so to sum up, good, not great, but worth the watch.
I would be like, fine, enjoyable. You'll forget about it.
Okay, Pongos and Perditas, that's nearly it for the show this week. Our own resident Cruella De Vil, Nicole, is coming up in just a few minutes with a song from the movie. Spoilers.
Isn't that an insult?
Well, she's an iconic villain. So.
Oh no, we came down that Cruella's the good guy, so...
Yeah, you're welcome, Nicole. You can find new episodes of Magic by Design every Monday, where all magical podcasts are downloaded. Check out our website at magicbydesign.buzzsprout.com to find a full list of podcast providers. Magic by Design is also on all your favourite social media platforms, except TikTok, because we refuse.
Why do you refuse?
Because I'm too old, Gar.
That's true.
I'm just too old. I don't even know what to do with it. I can't dance either. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magic by Design Pod, on Twitter at Magic Design Pod, and on the Insta at Magic by Design Pod. That's my newscaster voice.
Very good.
If you're a fan of the show, please do consider giving us a positive review on your podcast platform of choice, share the podcast on your socials, or even recommend the show to a fellow Disney lover. Also, if you've got an afternoon to spare, feel free to make 101 different accounts and give us 5-star reviews on each of them.
I'm pretty sure that's fraud.
Well, any means to get the podcast where it needs to be again. You could name the accounts after each of the Dalmatians. Pongo says 5 stars. Perdita says 5 stars. Patch says 3.5 stars. What the heck, Patch?
Patch.
What's your beef?
Clearly, it's like, I'm the star. You didn't talk about me enough.
We'll be back next week at the same time, same place with Disney's 18th animated feature, The Sword in the Stone. But until then, stay safe and remember, if a fur-crazed woman offers to pay for your litter of puppies, she may not be a dog lover who wants to give them a good home. Now then, Nicole is here to sing us out with Cruella De Vil from 101 Dalmatians, as well as giving us 101 fun facts about the music of the film. Well, maybe
Pressure.
Maybe not 101 facts. That'd be a pretty long podcast. Take it away, Nicole.
Hello Disney fans, it's your musical correspondent Nicole coming to you live from my bedroom. This week we're following the 101 Dalmatians into London. For this movie, George Bruns completed the acclaimed jazz-influenced score, while Disney newbie Mel Levin wrote the music and the lyrics for the songs. Mel was Disney's first solo songwriter. Normally, a composer and lyricist teamed up for the previous movies. Mel previously worked with the animation studio at United Productions of America. His buddies who had transferred over to Disney recommended him to Walt, and so Mel made his Disney debut with this film. The song we're focusing on this week is Cruella De Vil. It is said that Mel wrote 3 versions of this song, the final one being the bluesy number we hear in the movie, which was composed in 45 minutes. I hope you enjoy my version. Cruella De Vil, Cruella De Vil, if she doesn't scare you, no evil